What is the perfect amount of time to write a screenplay?
I feel like it's a moving finish line, unfortunately. Like I wrote Weather Girl in like 4 weeks. 6-month rule took me like 3 years, you know, because I kept going and scrapping things and going back. But I'm very happy with how that script turned out. So it's like that was probably the perfect amount of time to do it. I think any less than 6 weeks is a bad idea. I've written scripts faster because that was the job. But the script isn't better than it would have been if we had given it 6 weeks, if that makes any sense. But yeah, it's a constantly moving target, and I feel like it's about what is the script? Is this a collaborative piece of work? Is this something that I'm writing for a studio, or is it something I'm writing for me specifically, or are there, you know, producers involved? Whose idea and what are we trying to accomplish, right? Because very rarely is it just, let's write the best movie we possibly can. That really is just stuff that I do on my free time when I'm not getting paid for anything. Because when I'm getting paid for something, it's like, here's the idea, it's due here, don't change any of the locations because I've already built sets, don't change any of the casting because we've already cast it. That is there are these restrictions, and I often say that screenwriting is more about putting a round peg in a square hole than it is coming up with a great American movie. It's about dancing around people's expectations and personalities and necessities while trying to keep it feeling like a movie, right? And it's one of those funny things about doing, whether you're directing or whether you're writing, is that the goal is to make this into something that feels like, if you're sitting in the theater, this feels like a movie. You know what I mean? Which is a very funny target to put on it, right? Of like, instead of just make the best thing you can, it's like, yeah, but it has to follow these rules and it has to look a certain way and it has to feel like this so that the audience can enjoy whatever artistry I'm trying to convey. But it has to fit in this box. Right? The inciting incident has to happen on page 15 or they're going to say it's boring. They're not going to know why it's boring, but they're going to be like, this is really dragging. So again, it really depends. And sometimes the more time is not better. Sometimes it's better just to kind of, let's just knock this out and not go back to the Maharaja every single time we send in a draft. Because that's my least favorite of like, here's a new draft, and then everybody will have a meeting without me and they'll come back and it's like, great, love it, except for let's change these broad, overarching themes and whatnot. And I'm like, no, what I'd like from you is, page 8, I don't think she'd say this. Page 40, this seems like too talky. You know, specific, let's take this blueprint that we have, which is all the script is, right? It's just a blueprint for what you're gonna do on the day. And let's hone this so we're even closer, even though it's probably not very close to what's going to happen on the day, you know? Because things change all the time.
Interesting. So the more time you have actually isn't any easier than, let's say, if you, hey, let's do this in 48 hours.
Right. Yeah. Just different challenges, you know? But like if you have no end date in mind, basically what you're struggling with is that nobody has plans to make this movie right now. Right? So there's no money being spent. The only money being spent is probably on you as the writer. And so there's also the thing that happens on every script that you're hired to write. I don't care. Every script will have this moment of, this is not how I saw it in my brain. And you have to get over that. Either it's that you rewriting it completely because now that they see it on the page, they know how to convey to you what's in their brain, right? Or you convince them that what's on the page is even better than what you had in your brain. Because if somebody has an idea and it's their idea, right, they're going to have very specific things about that. But if they don't have the ability to explain that to a writer, then it's worthless, right? Then I'm just going to do what's in my brain because I'm the one putting it on paper. And if you could do it, then you probably would have put it on paper, but you didn't. So now it's my job.
How do you begin a screenplay?
You know, it's one foot in front of the other, right? I don't really like outlining. That's not I have my druthers, I don't, oh, sorry, I'm hitting my mic. If I have my druthers, I don't outline, I just tear into it and I start from the beginning. And there are times where I will skip a section if I feel like it's gonna slow me down or I don't know how to address it yet. And I'll go to the next section with the idea of I'm gonna come back around. But I usually start with a big beginning. You know, I feel like every screenplay, no matter what type of movie it is, needs to have an opening that grabs you. And so that's usually what I start with. What's the essence of this film? What would the opening sequence that would satisfy a super fan of whatever this movie is, right? If it's a drama, if it's an action movie, you know, I got the writing job for the American Pie Girls Rules by doing a big comedic set piece, you know, where you kind of take all the different aspects, you know, it's a teen rom-com sex comedy with physical comedy, and, you know, we're just gonna do a big set piece, and that's what got me the job, you know, was I just wrote like a 10-page opener, and that's where I start, just the beginning, try to open with a bang. I always think of James Bond movies. They always open with an action sequence in the middle, usually in the middle of what's happening, so that the people in the movie theater are kind of catching up, you know, in the opening 3 or 4 minutes of like, who's the bad guy? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And I just try to do that for every type of movie. Yeah, that's where I start, right at the beginning.
How important are ideas?
Yeah, I mean, they're super important. You know, it's like ideas, I think all across the spectrum, they're important, right? Obviously in screenwriting, ideas, big ideas, different ways to go about things, different ways to achieve what other movies have done, but through a different path, right? But as a director, I've really embraced the actors' ideas of what they come in thinking about. Like, I never get tired of an actor coming to me and being like, studied the script, had an idea, or had a question that led to an idea. And, you know, most of the time it's like, oh, what does this person do for a living? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you think they do for a living? You know, it's like we don't ever talk about their work in this movie. So, but I love that. I love people coming in with their own creative juices flowing, and, you know, maybe it works or maybe it doesn't, but it's so important to the process that the DP has his own creative ideas on how to do this, that the composer does, that the actors do certainly, and the, you know, screenwriter and the director, and we can all have these big, basically writer's room sessions about everything from the whole movie to the score to this character to how this character deals with grief. You know, all of that stuff is very important, and it only works if everybody brings in their own ideas, if everybody does their homework and has the courage, but also is allowed to be creative and have these conversations. Some directors, some sets aren't that kind of set where you can come in and say, I was just thinking maybe, I don't know, she has an English accent. I don't know, that's a bad example, but you know what I mean. It's like, there are some sets where they're like, absolutely not, get out of here with this idea. And there are other sets where it'd be like, well, why would that be? And how do we get there? And some of the best aspects of the movies that I've made have been someone else's idea of like, what would be cool? This would be cool, or this would be funny, or this, you know, invariably the rule of my career is the funniest line in the movie is not mine. It's somebody else came up with it. And that has never proven untrue. Like, it's always in the trailer, and it's always either an improv or a suggestion from a producer or, you know, from somebody else. But it's never something that I wrote.
Sounds like then, again, going back to flexibility, because you might get notes from a studio, no, we don't like this, change this.
Right.
But then also on your own projects, picking and choosing if people have input.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I love to encourage my entire team to be able to come up to me and talk to me. And it can get trying, because obviously you're trying to do a lot of things, right? And you don't want people constantly being like, hey, Blayne, quick question, just got a quick question. But I've learned that if I discourage that, then I miss things, right? And the rule is like every fifth question or comment or concern from somebody is something very real that I should have already noticed, right? I'm thinking about something on the last film where there was a continuity issue that nobody had noticed, and we had a very shy young crew member who was really just a PA, and she came up and she's like, I'm sorry, Blayne, but I think that she had on that different jacket, didn't she? You know, I'm like, how did that happen? Thank you, you know, but there's always something like that, and that you can't watch all sides all at once, and especially the independent film. I mean, hopefully everybody that's watching this is on a well-financed film that has department heads, and you know, all the people below those department heads are incredibly professional, but probably, you know, everybody's on an independent film set where you have some real talent, some real experience, surrounded by some real inexperience of people who just want to learn how to do this, and you got to listen to people. But those ideas, they're everywhere, and you just have to be willing to hear them, I think.
What's your process for generating ideas?
It's a good question. I wish it was more, I don't know, creatively romantic, but really, I'll take a shower, you know, I'll go for a run, it's really me trying to drag something out of me, you know, as opposed to being inspired. Because normally I'm working on something, and like the something already exists, and I need ideas on how to fix something, overcome a problem, just keep it moving. So it's constantly me trying to like drag it out instead of, I always, you know, make the comparison of like, I'm not the kind of writer who lights candles and does a bubble bath and, you know, listens to Enya or something like that to get into the creative zone. I'm the guy who's like, I got a coffee, I have to write 3 pages this morning, let's go. So, you know, I'm not saying that that's the way for everybody, but for me, it is. If I'm really stuck, I'll go to a bar and I'll have my computer out on the bar. I think it's because I've worked in restaurants and bars for so long that I just feel kind of comfortable there. But I'm also distracted just enough. Like you can watch, you know, I sit very close to the server station, so I see the interaction of the people that work there. And for some reason, it's relaxing to me, and I work. I can get a lot of work done doing that. And it became a crutch for a second where I'm like, I need to go and do this in order to get the script finished. But then I was away from it for a long time, and I'm like, okay, I don't need that. I can do all kinds of things, but that is the thing that if I'm really blocked, I go to a bar and I sit there and I sit next to the waiters. I don't know. It's a weird knock on wood kind of thing, I guess.
Certain libraries are good too.
Yeah. Now, when I lived in New York, I would always go to the big Ghostbusters library, you know, the New York Public, you know, and it was great.